The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. Its walls held the memories of countless debates, treaties, and declarations that shaped the destiny of over 900 civilizations. Today, the ancient chamber buzzed with a different energy. Representatives from across the known universe had gathered not for war or peace negotiations, but for something that many considered impossible. Doctor stood at the entrance, her simple white lab coat looking almost comical against the magnificent robes and ceremonial armor worn by the alien delegates. She was 43 years old, born on a small farm in Argentina, and she had spent the last 18 years of her life chasing a dream that everyone told her was foolish. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the small metal case that contained her life's work. The High Speaker, a being of shifting light and geometric patterns, called the assembly to order. His voice echoed through the hall like wind through crystal caves. The chamber fell silent as thousands of eyes, sensors, and perception organs turned toward the small human woman walking toward the central platform. Remembered the first time she learned about the withering plague. She was a young medical student when humanity made first contact with the galactic community. The aliens had welcomed humans with open arms, sharing technology and knowledge freely. But they also shared their greatest sorrow. The withering plague had existed since before recorded galactic history. It struck without warning, causing cells to slowly decay over years, leading to a painful death that no medicine could prevent. Every species in the galaxy was vulnerable. The disease did not discriminate between carbon-based life forms or silicon entities. It attacked the fundamental building blocks of biological existence itself. It had claimed billions of lives. Entire planetary populations had been wiped out. The greatest scientific minds from thousands of worlds had tried and failed to find a cure. When announced her intention to study the withering plague, her alien colleagues had looked at her with something between pity and amusement. The ambassador, a being who had lived for 3,000 years, gently told her that she was wasting her short human. The disease was simply incurable. It was a fact of galactic existence, like the expansion of the universe or the death of stars. But had something that most galactic scientists lacked. She had human stubbornness. She also had a fresh perspective, unburdened by thousands of years of failed attempts and accumulated despair. Where others saw an impossible problem, she saw a puzzle waiting to be solved. Now she stood before the assembled might of galactic civilization, ready to present her findings. The chamber was so quiet that she could hear her own heartbeat. The High Speaker gestured for her to begin, took a deep breath and activated her presentation device. A holographic display sprung to life above her head, showing complex molecular structures and biological data. She began speaking in a clear, steady voice. She explained how she had approached the problem differently than her predecessors. Instead of trying to destroy the plague directly, she had studied why some individuals survived longer than others. She had traveled to remote worlds, collecting samples from survivors and analyzing their genetic makeup. The alien delegates listened with polite skepticism. They had heard similar presentations before, always ending in disappointment. Continued, describing how she had discovered a tiny variation in a specific protein structure among long-term survivors. This variation was so subtle that the sophisticated scanning technology of advanced civilizations had overlooked it for. Their instruments were designed to detect large anomalies, not microscopic differences that seemed insignificant. Human medical science, being relatively primitive, still relied heavily on manual observation and intuitive leaps. Had spent countless hours looking at samples under basic microscopes, making notes by hand, and following hunches that no computer algorithm would have suggested. The delegate, a being composed of interconnected neural tissue, leaned forward with sudden interest, noticed the movement and felt a spark of hope. They were considered the greatest biologists in the galaxy. If she had caught their attention, she was on the right track. She explained her next breakthrough. The protein variation she had discovered acted as a natural shield against the plague's attack mechanism. The disease worked by breaking down cellular bonds, but this protein created a secondary bond that was resistant to the plague's destructive enzymes. The chamber grew increasingly still as continued. She described how she had spent 5 years developing a synthetic version of this protein. Her laboratory had been a converted barn on her family's farm. Her equipment was outdated by galactic standards. Her funding came from teaching positions and small research grants that more prestigious scientists had rejected. But she had succeeded. She had created a compound that could be administered to any biological life form, regardless of species, that would trigger the production of the protective protein. The treatment was simple, inexpensive, and had shown complete success in her trials. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Complete success was a claim that had never been made before regarding the withering plague. The ambassador rose, his ancient face showing an emotion that could not identify. He asked to see the trial data, transferred the files to the central display. Numbers and charts filled the air above the delegates' heads. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the delegate made a sound that translation device rendered as pure astonishment. The being's neural clusters were pulsing rapidly as it processed the information. The data showed 112 test subjects from 47 different species. All had been in various stages of withering plague infection. All had received treatment. All had shown complete cellular regeneration within 6 months. None had experienced any negative side effects. None had shown any signs of relapse in the 3 years since treatment. The high speaker's geometric form flickered with colors that had never seen before. His voice, when he spoke, had lost its formal cadence. He asked to confirm that these results were accurate and unaltered. Nodded. She explained that she had submitted all her data to the Galactic Medical Authority for independent verification before requesting this audience. The authority had confirmed her findings just 2 weeks ago. The chamber erupted into chaos. Thousands of voices spoke at once in hundreds of languages. Translation devices struggled to keep up with the flood of questions, exclamations, and expressions of disbelief. The ambassador was weeping, had not known that his species could produce tears. He explained, his voice breaking, that he had lost his entire family to the withering plague over the centuries. His children, his partners, his parents, all gone to a disease that he had believed was eternal and undefeatable. The delegate was already sending messages to their home world, requesting immediate production of compound. They asked for permission to begin manufacturing, offering her any price she wanted for the formula. Shook her head. She had not come here for profit or fame. She announced that she was releasing her formula into the public domain. It would belong to the entire galaxy, free of charge, forever. The silence that followed was different from the silence before her presentation. This was the silence of beings trying to comprehend an act of generosity that seemed impossible. A young delegate from a species did not recognize approached the platform. Through her translation device, learned that his home world was currently in the grip of a withering plague epidemic. Half the population was infected. They had been preparing for extinction. The young delegate knelt before, a gesture that apparently held deep significance in his culture. He asked her why she had done this. Why had she spent her entire career pursuing something that everyone said was impossible? Why was she giving away a cure worth more than most planetary economies? Smiled and helped the young delegate to his feet. She told him about her grandmother, who had died from cancer when was a little girl. She remembered feeling helpless and angry, watching someone she loved suffer from a disease that medicine could not cure. She had made a promise to herself then, even as a child, that she would dedicate her life to fighting the diseases that caused such suffering. When she learned about the withering plague, she saw the same pain and helplessness on a galactic scale. billions of beings across thousands of worlds, all living in fear of a disease that struck without mercy. She could not ignore their suffering simply because others said a cure was impossible. As for giving the formula away, explained that she had everything she needed. She had her family's farm, her work, and now she had the knowledge that she had made a difference. What more could she want? The High Speaker called the assembly back to order, though his voice still carried traces of emotion. He announced that the Galactic Council would vote on a motion to award Doctor the highest honor that galactic civilization could bestow, the Star of Eternal Gratitude, given only to those who had changed the course of history. The vote was unanimous. 917 civilizations voted in favor, not a single delegate opposed. Accepted the honor with quiet grace. She asked only that the galaxy remember that humans were still young and learning. They had much to offer, but they also had much to learn from their galactic neighbors. She hoped that this discovery would be the beginning of greater cooperation between Earth and the wider universe. As she left the chamber, was surrounded by delegates wanting to thank her, to touch her, to simply be near the human who had done what no one else could. She moved through them with patience and kindness, accepting their gratitude while deflecting their praise. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. On worlds millions of light years from Earth, beings who had never heard of humanity learned the name. They learned that a species barely a century old in galactic terms had solved a problem that had defeated civilizations dating back to the dawn of time. Medical facilities everywhere began producing compound. Within months, the first patients were being cured. Within years, the withering plague would be nothing more than a dark memory. And on a small farm in Argentina, returned to her work. There were still diseases to cure, still mysteries to solve. The galaxy was vast and full of suffering that she might be able to help. She had proven that fresh eyes and stubborn determination could succeed where ancient wisdom had failed. The universe had gained something precious that day. Not just a cure for a terrible disease, but proof that the youngest species in the galactic community might have the most to teach their elders. Humanity had arrived on the cosmic stage, and their first gift had been hope. Smiled as she looked up at the stars that night. Somewhere out there, beings she would never meet were being cured of a disease that had haunted their civilizations for. It was, she thought, a good beginning.